I will be, making that call right now.
Good morning. We still have a couple of people that I don't see as having joined just yet.
Yeah, hi, this is Clark Stevens. I am joining via the RCDSMM main, and for some reason on this account, I can't. Oh, there's a rename. Okay, never mind.
It's okay. I actually just mentioned to him that you'd be coming in under the identity.
Yes, got it.
And I see Barbara is joining right now. I'm expecting Patrick Kaufman to be here for the first item. He will be recusing himself from hearing the second item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Noah. Yeah, okay, I believe Barbara's still connecting to audio. As soon as she's connected, then you're ready to go, Courtney.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yes.
Barbara, if you are able to hear audio at this point, if you can give us an indication.
Maybe if she tries to disconnect and then reconnect again, if anybody has her number or email.
I am shooting her an email right now.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay, I think that it's about 5 minutes after. We do have two projects, so perhaps we'll start the meeting and hopefully Barbara will be able to join us in progress.
Perfect. Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Well, welcome everybody. I would like to call to order the Malibu Environmental Review Board meeting of January 24th, 2024. This meeting is being held by teleconference. Boards and city staff are participating from remote locations. Members of the public can participate in the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public wishing to speak during the meeting must click the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen to indicate a desire to speak after the item has been announced by the chair and must be present in the teleconference when called upon to be recognized. Once called upon, please lower your hand in the Zoom meeting. Board members, if you have comments to make during this meeting, please raise your hand using the raise hand link at the bottom of your screen, and I will call on you in turn so we can make our discussion clear for the record and for the public. So we will go to item number 1, which is written and oral communications from staff and the board. Rebecca, do we have anything at this time?
At this time, we do not have anything under those categories.
Okay, and for item 2, old business, I'm seeing none.
That's correct.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 3, which is new business, and I will pass this off to Renika.
Good morning. Thank you, Courtney. Good morning, ERB members. My name is Renika Brooks, and I'm a planner with the Malibu Planning Department. And some of you may recall this item was before the ERB. I believe it was in 2022. The application includes the construction of a new single-family residence and associated development. The project does include 4 discretionary requests, 1 for a variance for construction on steep slopes. It also includes a variance for encroachment into the ESHA, a site plan review for height above 18 feet, and a minor modification to reduce the front yard setback. The property is located at 5610 Canaan Doom Road. Parker, am I advancing the slides or are you advancing the slides?
I'll do one.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Can I have the next slide, please? And the property is located in central Malibu, indicated by the star on this vicinity map. Next slide, please. And a little closer view of the subject property. It is an irregularly shaped lot on the east side of Canaan Doom Road, north of Cavalier Road. Next slide, please. And the property is zone RR5. And the next couple of slides include the existing site conditions. This is the first. Next slide, please. The site is vacant, part of a 3-lot subdivision that was approved by LA County in 1990. Next slide, please. And again, the project includes the construction of a new 2-story single-family residence. That residence includes an attached 3-car garage, new driveway and curb cut, in addition to patios, hardscape, and an on-site wastewater treatment system. Next slide, please. And this project is before the ERB because there was originally identified oak woodland ESHA at the very northern corner of the property. It's indicated by the yellow arrow. The city's LCP maps indicate there was ESHA that runs through the property, which is indicated by the red line through the middle of the property. But the original site-specific biological assessment indicated that there was ESHA on the very northern end of the property. When the ERB last considered this item, there was a discrepancy between the landscape plan that showed additional oak woodland through the middle of the property. So the direction was for the applicant team to revisit the location of the ESHA. I believe initially it was understood that there potentially was ESHA through the middle of the property, but that it was destroyed by the fire. the Woolsey fire from 2018. Some of those oak woodland plant species have since reestablished themselves, which warranted the applicant to go back out and just reassess the location of the ESHA. Next slide, please. And again, this is the previous fuel modification plan that originally showed the fuel modification would slightly encroach into the ESHA, which again is indicated by the red triangle at the very northern portion of the property. Next slide, please. After the applicant reassessed the location of the ESHA, primarily because of the resprouting of oak woodland, it was determined that the ESHA boundary needed to be modified. So it is now indicated by the green dash line that kind of comes, well, you see it depicted here. And so what has resulted by the updated ESHA delineation is that there is encroachment of the fuel modification from both zones, I believe from all three zones, zones A, B, and C. That information is quantified in the fuel modification plan that's part of your ERB packet. The applicant has confirmed that they will be mitigating the ESHA encroachment. From the last ERB meeting, I believe the only recommendation was that the applicant was only to do the minimum fuel modification required because of the encroachment into the ESHA. But now with this modified ESHA delineation, the project is back before the ERB to gauge if there's any additional recommendations that would be appropriate for this project. Next slide, please. And that does conclude my presentation. I am available to answer any questions. I believe the applicant team, including their biological, their biologists should be available. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renika. That was great. All right, so are there any board members that have comments right off the bat, or shall I pick on people? Okay. Anthony, thank you for volunteering.
My question is, so what is the fuel modification recommendation from the fire department relative to this new ESHA, which basically is significantly larger than it originally was?
It's my understanding nothing has changed with the project, except for there was new plantings that were proposed within the newly established ESHA areas. Those plantings were pulled out, and I believe there was also a gate or fence within the area that is now determined to be ESHA that has since been removed. So I'm looking at the fuel mod plan here, and it looks like it is the typical, let's see, zone A is 20 feet, zone B, let's see here, is 50 feet from the property, and zone C, it appears to be 100 feet. The applicant can maybe opine as well. I believe they're on the call.
And members of the applicant team, if you'd like to respond to a question being asked in the meeting, please click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. And if you could unmute for Young Lee.
Oh, hi. Yeah, my name is Young-Sub Lee. I'm the project architect. I will briefly explain the fuel modification. Based on the modified ESHA line, the fuel modification zone has not been really changed, but basically the ESHA line is mostly under the zone B, but the fuel modification requires the ground cover shall be maintained at a height not to exceed 6 inches in zone A and B. If on a slope, 12 inches acceptable. So basically, yeah, so there's, as far as we know, there's no like a protected trees and the species within our lot. So according to the field modification, we have to maintain existing landscapes. Like Lenaika mentioned, we are not planting any new trees in zone C or B, only on A around the structure, new structures. That's only the flat areas, and that's where we only have a minimum landscaping, new landscapings.
So am I clear that zone B, even though it virtually takes in all of that ESHA area, is going to be maintained as a zone B? Is that correct?
Yes, according to the field modification, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Was that your only comment? I just wanted to make sure before we move on.
That was my only question. I was just a little confused by the architectural drawings on what the actual A, B, and C were, where they were. Thank you.
Yeah. Clark, go ahead.
Yeah, so with that in mind, it appears that the recovering walnut woodland, I guess it's a future walnut woodland, is within some of the fuel mod, at least in C, is it not? I've been looking at the drawings, maybe someone can help with that. And if so, if the treatment recommendation or requirement from LA County Fire is to maintain a ground cover height of a minimum, what are resprouting walnuts? Are they trees or ground cover? In which case, right? I mean, I could easily see how an owner maintaining this would think, well, that's a ground cover. I have to cut it back. So there's a bunch of questions in there. One is that where is that resprouting oak woodland relative to the footprint? And maybe it might be helpful if you could pull, because I can't really go back and forth very easily to the package. But and then if so, what does the fire department say you have to do to that resprouting oak woodland?
Parker, could you pull back up the presentation? Let's see. It would be the slide that has the green. Yeah, I think it's the next slide. Yep, this one here. Okay, so it looks like I'm looking at the field mod, a close-up of the field mod plan. This is the irrigated zone. Let's see.
I think I see it here. So A would be your irrigated, B is
It's also irrigated.
so irrigated. Yeah, and I heard it said that, but I couldn't find it in the drawings where irrigation had been removed from all areas, or maybe it's just a note that all irrigation and new plantings would be removed from within that green line, right? Essentially that. So if that's the case, the only thing that's left is the treatment of that relative to the defensible space. And that's, I believe that oak woodland is coming down a draw, basically where the extension of the green goes beyond the red, the city's mapped, that little triangular section there. And if so, it sounded like all that has to be cut to kept at, the 6-inch level, which means that those not yet trees would continue to be pruned or eliminated. I guess that sounds like a statement, but it's still a question. I don't really understand what happens to those trees. Young trees, pre-trees, I guess, in terms of legality.
I'm wondering, Mr. Schaefer, could you provide feedback on specifically what is required for Zone B in terms of alteration to the vegetation?
And also C, because there's, C extends into that as well.
Well, I believe C is just the thinning, so it basically removes any dead debris that has fallen.
The problem, the problem is with these kinds of situations is that the county fire department over time has changed or sort of vacillated about what's required in these areas and everything. I'll tell you quite frankly, I'm really not sure because, like I say, the county will change and sort of trying to move into the area that the city is more supportive of. And so each one of these acts, each one of these is probably a situation in itself. And the question really becomes of, whether their recommendations are actually within the state fire code. And I'll tell you quite frankly, at this point, it's sort of up in the air about what those requirements are and how they're to be applied.
So I'm wondering, I'm kind of thinking back to the previous ERB meeting where the recommendation at that point was that the fuel modification should only include that which is minimally required by the code. And I'm wondering if that would apply, and that would carry over obviously to this project, that the applicant would clarify what that standard is. We do have the surface area of the ESHA to be impacted, and that does require mitigation, regardless of whatever the minimum fire department requirements are. So I am looking at the field modification plan, and it does state that landscaping and vegetation in this zone being Zone B, shall be provided. Let's see, wait. Shall typically consist primarily of green lawns, ground covers, and adequately spaced shrubs and trees.
Yeah, I was looking for a kind of mitigation plan in the package, and that would indicate, because I think for me that the house seems to be, where it can be, it generally is far from ashes. So it really comes down to the specifics on that plan, and what you just read, Renika, is spaced shrubs, and so it comes down, for me, it comes down, I think if there was a drawing that showed the mapped recovering oak woodland, and I saw it mentioned in the documents, and its projected extent at maturity, it would be nice to see something that says, we know it's here, it's indicated in the approval as a sensitive area. It's kind of it's in between the lines, and there is I recognize there's a mitigation document in there, mitigation report that talks about it, but it would be great if there was some documentation or description as part of an approval that would just say, remember this is here, and even though it's a north slope, I just feel like, practically speaking, what will happen to that walnut woodland is that it will go away again as part of, at least in Zone B, what would end up happening. But I don't know, what I can't see is the overlay of that particular patch of future walnut woodland. That'd be high value habitat that is overlapping B. C, I think we're okay. We'd still, anyway, I'm just not seeing it. If I missed it, I apologize, but I just don't see a footprint of habitat plan, particularly marking that patch that shows its relationship to the defensible spaces, those setback
Mhm.
zones.
I just wanted to comment that I brought up the biological inventory. I'm not sure, I'm sure it's in the packet, but I brought it up specifically just to point out that the ESHA that has been delineated, she doesn't differentiate between there being any other type of habitat there. So California walnut woodland is the only identified habitat in that area. And she does include some photos of what the resprouting walnuts look like in 2022, I believe is when she did this assessment. So so just so I can make it clear, Clark, your recommendation is to have some type of documentation on like future walnut woodland coverage in relation to fuel modification efforts.
Yeah, because I saw those photos too, and I didn't realize they were 2022. We've had some good growth here. That probably is a decent sized little patch of walnut woodland, and I'm just not clear whether, effectively LA County Fire is saying in any portion of that, cut that down, or if typical landowner being in the future. But before these trees are obviously trees, overly aggressive in that fuel mod, because that whole area was cut, right? Including those walnuts. They're coming back through, that they wouldn't just say, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do, is cut it down again. So just any sort of documentation besides the written, a map, a diagram that would just say, understory only, or whatever works with LA County Fire. And I realize there's a disconnect between the city of Malibu and LA County. We can't, they're going to say what they're going to say. But from the Malibu side, it'd be nice to note that this exists and should be treated differently than the rest of the surface within those defensible space zones.
Okay, I've written that down. We do have a tree report for the property that I'm trying to look at and just see, because Renika, we do have some tree mitigation for this parcel, so I'm wondering if that can be kind of incorporated into that mitigation that's already going to occur.
Yeah, that's what I had assumed.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm making notes, Renika, just I'm sure you are too, but I'm making some notes.
I apologize. I'm newish here, so that I don't know the process, what we're doing at what level. It sounds like there's a mitigation coordination level as well. But that being a north slope with the memory of Woolsey, I could just see that all getting, obliterated unless special care is taken and reminders are given.
Got it. Okay. I've made that note here, Clark, for them to incorporate that. Were there any other comments that you had beyond for now? Well, I'm sure other things may come up, but for now, okay. Okay, Noah, I see your hand up. Let's go to you.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the effort that both the city and the applicant went after the first round, where we identified that there may have been some trees that we're trying to recover that were being continuously cut back as the prep for the site. I can see in the photos that practice was stopped. Those trees are being allowed to recover. And so I just want to applaud the project team and the city for making that happen. I think that's really important. And it sets a really important precedence, because I think a lot of times on these projects, if you just mow it down, then it's not a tree and then we don't have to protect it. And this kind of shows that, that practice is not going to be overlooked. So I think that was a big win. As far as into the future, how the site is managed, I love that, the area that's going to be landscaped and like the footprint of the living space has all been brought back up out of the new ESHA zone. I am a little bit concerned, similarly to Clark, about the treatment of the area where we found the oak woodland, the walnut woodland. So it's kind of just below, if you take the line of the neighboring property and the house, it's a kind of a steep slope and you go straight down from there. About 100 feet away, I think, there's kind of like a vein of groundwater that cuts across the slope, and that's where that walnut woodland was. There was also other native plants there. I believe there was some giant wild rye and some shrubs that I don't think were identified in the habitat plan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
In the bio assessment, but I'm not sure that she identified wild rye in the bio assessment, but you mean in the landscape plan?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd have to look it up.
So my recommendation would be, to continue encouraging that recovering walnut woodland, to encourage those native species that are part of that community, to also, grow up as part of that walnut woodland. So maybe, it's a steep slope, so I think it probably is the 12-inch recommendation, but there's a lot of small shrubs and trees and giant wild rye and other things that continuously cutting back to 12 inches would impair, right? So think of it more as a landscaping plan where for the first 5 years those items should be identified as they come up, so that they can be protected until they grow to a size that they can then be managed by like a 30% annual reduction, or spaced appropriately to provide for the fuel modification. I also think that part of the landscaping plan should include reestablishing additional walnuts and natives in that zone. And perhaps over the rest of, the rest of that slope is really like a lot of weeds, right? So just continuously mowing those down and having that be a bare slope is going to lead to erosion and reduction of habitat, and it's also a little bit unsightly, right, for the homeowner. Wouldn't the homeowner rather have a nice, beautiful vegetated slope that can be appropriately managed for fuel modification? So I would recommend considering a landscape plan of native species that are appropriate for the area that can be spaced apart in a way that makes sense for fuel modification for that slope, so that it can be part of the habitat and part of the beauty of the property and not just a wasteland. So those are my recommendations.
I have been furiously typing and taking notes.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna kind of go over it just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And if the applicant wants to respond at any point, please feel free to raise your hand as well. Oh, I think that is the applicant, Joe. Asked to unmute.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to address, or I guess ask a question. Does the outline of the recommendations or the recommendations in your biology review sheet, does that answer these concerns or begin to answer them? Because we're clear that we're going to follow all of those recommendations that you've outlined. It's, they start on page 2 of the biology review sheet.
Oh, in terms of the tree mitigation?
It's just the concerns that have been raised about, going in there and harming the trees.
So I think that's a separate, correct me if I'm wrong, Renika, but I think he's maybe talking about the tree mitigation and how that will be treated separately. I think what Noah and Clark are bringing up are the other walnuts that are in recovery on the property in a different location than the Yeah, it's so, but I think what Renika and I were speaking to is possibly incorporating, I'm not really sure how this is gonna get incorporated, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but some of these concerns about maintaining the oak, the walnut woodland, incorporating them into the project somehow. So, yeah, again, I think Renika and I can work on how that's gonna get incorporated.
Okay, so it'd almost be an expansion of those recommendations.
Well, I kind of look at them like clarifying recommendations for what it will be required as mitigation.
Right.
Right. So there's a landscaping plan and there's some points about monitoring any of the native plant species that are compatible with the woodland. And so to be mindful of that in the proposed landscape plan. So to kind of build these recommendations into the approach to provide landscaping and fuel mod for the property.
Okay, that's good clarification. Thank you for that.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, or anybody, but if someone were to just have a property with an oak tree, just because it existed in fuel mod zone A or B, doesn't mean they can cut that said tree down. So I think an identification of the trees on the property, right? You just flag them and you note that they're there. So during fuel modification practices, they're avoided because they are a protected tree within the city. They may not be of size now, but okay, Anthony, I saw your hand raised. Do you have a comment or correct me?
Well, the only thing I want to say is that this is a very slippery slope. Remember that the fuel modification zone is to keep the structure from burning down. And we've had these discussions many times, and I'm flashing on a discussion where a similar discussion where all the houses burned down in the Woolsey fire. So my point is that remember, fuel modification is to keep the structure from burning down. And if you limit that fuel modification and the structure does burn down, does the city have a liability? And because it's very clear that the modification zone is for protection of the structure and doesn't say anything about the vegetation or anything else. It's primarily designed to be protection for the structure. And like I say, we've had this discussion many times, and some of those structures that we've had discussions about have burned. And the more you limit that modification zone, the higher the probability that structure will burn, particularly if it's got a steep slope below it. And that's just my only comment. And I'm, however the board or however the city wants to lead in this, that's fine. But I'm just adding that emphasis. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Anthony. Yeah. Noah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Anthony, and Anthony, your concerns there. So, I mean, there's requirements for fuel modifications for the various zones. The landscape plan for the structure itself it's not bare earth, right? There's shrubs, there's trees, there's ground covers, and those are all permitted within even zone A, because there's adequate spacing, there's height requirements for the ground cover, there's spacing between a tree and a shrub or groups of shrubs, there's spacing between, things not being within a certain distance from the house. So as a managed landscape, it's possible to have vegetation and provide adequate fuel modification. So the way I view it is, why isn't that also applied to the native habitat and vegetation that surrounds the home? Why does that have to be completely clear cut when the planted landscape vegetation around the house doesn't have to be cut? So my proposal is to view that zone B area and the zone C area. Well, the zone C is managed, I think, adequately by just removing, dead understory items. But the Zone B area, it doesn't need to be completely cleared in order to provide adequate fuel management. It just needs to be maintained the same way we would maintain a landscaped area with adequate spacing, height for ground cover, etc.
Clark, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I'd also like to respond to both Noah and Mr. Schaefer's comment. I agree that what Noah's articulating is what happens. It's like, okay, this I planted and I manage, even if I don't irrigate it, so it's garden and I'm going to treat it a certain way. This beyond that is the thing that I didn't plant, so I'm only going to manage by weed whipping. So these comments are based upon that practical reality. Like, so how do we identify critical resources? I also agree with Noah that from an erosion control standpoint, some appropriate spacing, but restoration, it's really a restoration plan within a landscape zone is what you're talking about. And from the owner's perspective, and again, I'm not speaking for the owner, but I live up here. If I would want that slope to be attractive, I would want it to be self-maintaining. And I absolutely 100% agree with Anthony that it's about the structure, but I won't stipulate that there's actually an inverse relationship, or there's a decreasing correlation between the condition of a landscape and whether a house survives in a wildfire as you move from the house. So 100% agree that it's about keeping the structure from burning, because if you go away in a wildfire, you evacuate and you come back and 100% of your landscape is burned and your house is still standing, you're not crying because you lost your landscape. You're crying with joy because your house is still there. And I just want to be careful. We've had lots of these discussions, not me, I haven't been here for those discussions, but I think we need to change the narrative a little bit. There's some initial studies that show that in Woolsey, the highest correlation of structure loss to landscape condition correlated to, it's a trick question, to no landscape, basically no vegetation. So bare earth, because what ignites homes is ember storms. And if you have a smooth surface right up to the bump in that flow, all the embers drop right at your home, which is the thing you're trying not to ignite. So again, I think the project is well considered, right? It's well cited. We're getting back to the project, but that north slope is going to be, I think that the landowner would benefit by a specific plan like Noah's describing. I'm not sure it can be a requirement, but I would recommend to the owner that they do that so they can protect themselves from people coming out, well-meaning folks doing evaluations and saying, you need to cut all that down. So you can say, no, I don't. Because again, as you move from the home, zone 0 is what the state's calling it, 5 feet through the irrigated zone. I mean, the impact of ignition, even on a north-facing slope, diminishes as you move away. And I don't think there's any reason that at approximately 100 feet, a nice pocket of soon-to-be beautiful native wetland, or sorry, native woodland is going to be anything but a benefit. It's an ember trap and visual benefit, and it's also at close to 100 feet. And then that goes back to my request, like, where is the woodland relative to the fuel mod? Anyway, so just to respond there.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Thank you, Noah, and thank you, Clark, and Anthony, for all your thoughts. I think as part of your recommendations, Noah, unless you have more, I'm going to put in the recommendation. There's also a lot of things that I think maybe we're not considering, like the fact that I said, that if there was a native protected tree and it's in zone A or B, they're not going to be able to cut it down. So I think that we'll put those recommendations in there to flag the resprouting walnuts, and some of the current natives. The applicant, I believe, has to do some mitigation anyways for the fuel mod zones A, B, and C that fall within ESHA, and they will choose how to do that. And some of that mitigation, if they so choose to plant plants, that will be covered within that. And I've made notes about Anthony's, fuel modification efforts. Is there anything else pertaining to that, as far as recommendations go for the planning commission specifically for this project?
Yeah, so I would just state the recommendation, and if the other board members will agree with me. So recommendation number 1 would be to identify those resprouting walnuts within the landscaping plan, and any supporting woodland vegetation that we want to keep on site within that landscaping plan. I would also, as you know, maybe as part of the mitigation, have a good portion of that mitigation be on site rather than, some off-site banked mitigation, and have that support planting or identifying and protecting in place native plants all along that slope in Zone B, and have those maintained, irrigated if necessary, and protected in place and marked on the landscape plan.
If that does become a mitigation, if the applicant chooses to make that a mitigation area, that will, I'm not even sure that you can fuel modify mitigation. So there's also that too. There's a lot of things at play that I think need to be hammered out, and I will give Young an opportunity to respond. Do you have, let's see, I'll ask to unmute. I don't know if it's working. Okay.
Yeah, hi. Oh, thank you. I just want to point out, I read this fuel modification, approval fuel modification carefully. Under the Zone B, you already addressed the fourth paragraph. Down below, it says the specimen native plants may be approved to, may be approved to remain if properly maintained for adequate defensible spaces. So I believe the OC Fire, the LA Fire Department, they already acknowledges about this kind of concern. So they have this already incorporated for this fuel modification.
Perfect. Thank you, Young. That was a great response. I appreciate it. Okay, so Noah, are you all set? I see your hand still raised. Okay, great. Okay, so let's move on. Jennifer, go ahead. And you're muted.
This
Okay.
isn't even necessarily moving on. I just wanted to thank Noah and Clark for such thoughtful responses. I absolutely endorse your suggestions, and I'm also new to this, and so my area of expertise is in animals. So I appreciate these learning so much from you, and I think, from a perspective of creating a place for habitat for animals, I just applaud these suggestions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer. I just wanted to check in with our other ERB members for recommendations for this project. Please raise your hand at this time. I know Barbara, yeah, I know you were having trouble with audio. Are you with us? I'll ask to unmute.
I'm sort of with you.
There you go. Hey, Barbara.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what the board has said. I think that we don't want to reduce the fuel modification area, or be very careful, I guess, of how that's done. I missed the beginning of the meeting, so I apologize for that. But one of my main focus is architecture. So I was dealing somewhat with the setbacks and so on. And probably everyone else has approved the building as is, but I don't like the idea that it is reducing the setbacks. And I think that the building could actually be angled according to let's just call it the west property line somewhat, and then be further away from the ESHA area, and be not reducing the setbacks as much as it is now. I think it's a very stiff project, and doesn't have to be so stiff. What we're talking about is, native species and so on. And I and I'm not sure what's been talked about with the artificial turf, but I found that strange that that was there. I also found it a bit strange that there was the impermeable concrete deck there, which I know there was a basement before, but I'm not quite sure why that is as large as it is. Is there any, does anyone know? No? Okay.
Maybe
So-
the architect can provide some feedback on that question.
Yes, hi. Yeah. So in terms of the building setback, I think it's one of the approaches that we were allowed and suggest in talk with city and the planning department when we initially developed these projects. In terms of how this building is shaped, I believe that's something that need to be not part of this bio report. Unless it has any concern that impacts to the ESHA lines and the fuel modification. Same thing for the artificial turf. It's I don't know. It's a client's choice. So I don't have any other way to answer to your question, Barbara.
Okay, what about the concrete deck? The owner?
Concrete deck, yeah. That was so. So you are against the concrete deck on the
Well,
corner?
it
or-
doesn't, it's not good for the water. I mean, the water should be seeping in a little bit rather than rolling off.
Oh,
So
about
something
that.
permeable would be
Yeah,
good.
so we already submit the civil grading plan with those stormwater management plans. So basically, we have along this street, you see those landscape areas
Yes.
along our property lines. So basically, from the concrete, all the rainwaters, flows to those, and we do have those rainwater collection tank in this landscape areas. So that's where all the rainwater will be collected and the filter and be eventually flow to the city main sewer lines.
Okay.
So it's because this report does not include the civil plan, but we already submit those plan and it is explained on those drawings.
And the city
Yeah.
is okay with that. Okay.
Well, Barbara, I think if there's some specific recommendations that you have, I can take notes of them. So if there's something that you would recommend to the planning commission in regards to this project, I can take those notes and you can
Okay.
outline them 1, 2, 3 or whatever.
Okay. Okay. So I didn't like the idea of the extreme modification, I guess, to the ESHA. And I'm not quite sure what's been talked about, but that seems to me to not be something we should do. So somehow or another reducing that request for the modification that the owner or the architect has applied for. That would be one concern. Let me see. And then there was something about the height of the building. And, right now they're asking for a modification for the height. And the building is pretty high, or the rooms are pretty high. Some of the spaces are 2-story spaces. So I don't see why the first floor, which is now 12-foot clear, couldn't be brought down to 11 feet, because there's also 2-story space. And then the second floor the same. So at least it's 1 foot less than what they're asking for.
Okay, so one of your
Because it just sets a precedent for other projects.
Okay, so the first recommendation is to reduce the requested modification to ESHA through the design of the building. And then the second recommendation is to reduce the height again through the design of the building.
Yes,
Okay,
and that's all for me.
okay.
Oh, did you have a issue with the impermeability of that deck?
I do, but if the city has said that's okay, it seems to me not to be a good idea.
Is
So
that
that
the
could be-
same? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say that we have other projects where if there was a recommendation for like a parking lot, for example, to increase permeability, that's within the ERB's purview. So if you recommend that concrete deck be converted to something permeable, then that would be part of your recommend. Not that I'm trying
Okay,
to
I will
put
recommend
words
that.
in your mouth,
Yes,
but I'm just.
I will definitely recommend that. Yeah, I think concrete deck is a terrible choice.
Can I just ask for clarification too? Is that the reason that the artificial turf is an issue as well, or is the artificial turf a landscaping issue?
I think it's a landscaping issue. I think artificial turf, the water goes through it,
Mhm.
but the
Okay.
concrete deck, it does not. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Barbara. I took notes on your recommendations. I saw Young raise his hand. Do you want to respond to those comments, Young?
Yes, first about the building height, if you look at the lot next to us, to the west, to the right side, there's already existing building, 2-story high. The City of Malibu zoning code allows even higher building height for 2 stories if the roof is pitched. In our project, we have a flat roof. That is why our building height is maximum probably 25 feet. If you look at the buildings, existing houses around these properties, across the Cannon Dune, there's also same 2-story high, probably it's a flat roof in this case, probably 25-foot building high. So I don't know. So unless it has an impact to the native trees or existing area, I don't know why this need to be addressed from this ERB meeting. Same for the concrete pavement. I mean, we are open to consider other options as well. But the city review this kind of like a stormwater management plan under their specific written code sections, and under this section they allow these approaches. So I'm not a little bit like following why these comments need to be come out from this meeting.
Okay, I mean, in my opinion, I mean, the concrete is not a good choice. I mean, that may be going against what the city is allowing, but I don't think it is a good choice. And then for the building height, I don't think it matters what the neighbors have done. You're asking for a modification, it seems. And I'm just saying lower the building a bit. I think that's more compatible with the area. I mean, with what Malibu wants to be. I don't think it wants to be, tall buildings. So we don't
wanted
have
to-
to do that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Barbara. I also wanted to point that Canaan Dune is a scenic road. So if the building height would limit any potential impacts to scenic resources, then that is a viable recommendation from the ERB.
Okay, so Clark, unless you have a recommendation, yes or no?
Well, I'm sorry, just real quick clarification I'm also an architect, Young, and I get it when you come back, there's this small change in the mapping, which isn't so small in its impacts. And now there's this opportunity for a second bite at the apple. I understand you're coming, it's like you wanted something, but the big one that Barbara pointed out is, and again, I noticed it as well, I'm just not sure where we are in the process, but if that building massing was further, I believe it's east, if north is up on our drawing set, further east and even rotated, the actual position of your fuel mod changes. So the siting of the building is an environmental impact consideration. I understand form follows garage, and then, okay, now there may be setback limits on the east side, I don't know, but just to clarify that, that's why the position of the home is like primary, because it sets all those impact zones and it, you know, increases the likelihood that habitat over time will be lost.
I made that note. Okay. Yeah, I made the note. And it's in Barbara's comments, but it's in there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do any other ERB members have any comments at the time? Because I think we're ready to move on to the next project. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'll add one thing at the end because I actually have to hop off due to my involvement in the next project. But I would just say I'm a civil engineer, so I trust that this project has gone through thorough review with the previous environmental review board. But I would say with the biofiltration planter box that's proposed along the Cane and Doom frontage, it seems like with the provided estimated total water usage calculations, that there's ample opportunity to do some sort of retention system for capture and reuse of that stormwater runoff, more following the state's preferred hierarchy of infiltration, which I doubt you can do here due to the hillside condition. But with the potential for drought tolerant landscape using that retention system, I would strongly consider the engineering team to consider that. And with the artificial turf, there's arguments that it's not entirely permeable due to the compacted base material, and coupling that with the fact that artificial turf is not made from biodegradable material, it's not totally environmentally conscious. So if there's an opportunity to reconsider some of that artificial turf and maybe use that area for some drought tolerant vegetation from this potential retention system, that may be a good option.
Okay. I have made those notes. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. And you have to recuse yourself, right? Okay.
Yeah, from this next one. So I'll hop off.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick, for
All
your
right.
time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, for their comments on 5610 Cane and Doom. We will move on to item 3B, and I will pass this off to Adam.
Thank you, Courtney. My name's Adam Bazarkowitz. I'm a contract planner with the city. And just waiting for this to load on my end. Okay, so the project before you is coastal development permit number 22-003, located at 20741 Las Flores Mesa Drive. Next slide, please. So just to take a look at the property itself along Las Flores Mesa, it's outlined in green there. It is vacant except for a graded building pad and a few existing concrete driveways. And as you can see, the property is much larger than others in the immediate area. Next slide, please. So the proposed project is to build a 10,462 square foot, 2-story single-family residence with basement, outdoor decks, and attached garage, along with a new driveway and associated retaining walls, swimming pool, spa, and associated equipment, new on-site wastewater treatment system, landscaping, hardscaping, and grading. Next slide, please. So along with the proposed project are 3 discretionary requests. One for the reduction of the required 100-foot ESHA buffer, which is the reason why the project is before you today. Another variance for construction on slopes steeper than 2.5 to 1. This is for a portion of the proposed driveway. And for construction over 18 feet up to a maximum height of 24 feet for a flat roof and 28 feet for a pitched roof. Next slide, please. So here's a look at the site plan with the new driveway and the proposed residence on that previously graded building pad. So just keep that location in mind when we're looking at the next few maps. And let me just say as well that the development envelope encroaches into the 100-foot ESHA buffer, which necessitates the variance, and the project is designed to meet the 10,000 square foot maximum footprint. So excluding the fire department turnaround and access, the development area is just under 10,000 at 9,904 square feet. Next slide, please. So here's a look at the ESHA boundaries. The map on the left is from the city's GIS, with the red being the identified ESHA on the property. And then on the right is from the applicant's bioassessment. So not only showing the city's identified ESHA, but also the field verified ESHA there as well. So it takes up a good portion of the property, as you can see, along with the area where the proposed building and driveway are. Next slide, please. So in addition, in the bioassessment is a vegetation communities map showing obviously the various types that are present on the property. And in particular here, the building area is currently occupied by California sagebrush, but it is also disturbed. That's the green hatched area there. And the driveway also is going to occupy some existing area with fountain grass swords, along with more disturbed California sagebrush area. Next slide, please. So there's some native trees present on the site, and the applicant is proposing to protect some while also remove some, in particular a few toyon trees along with some oak as well. So they're proposing to protect a few and remove some. And in addition, there's some existing fountain grass, which would be removed and replaced with purple needle grass. And the existing purple needle grass within the development area would be preserved and protected. And you can also see the fuel mod buffers on here, which will lead into the next slide. So here's the fuel modification plan with zones A through C, 30 feet for zone A, 100 feet for zone B, and 200 for C. And you can see that one existing toyon falls within the fuel mod zone C area. Next slide, please. And this is just a quick look at the landscaping plan that was included with your application materials. That also shows the plant schedule on the full size set. But you can see that there's really no planting within zone A, and the newer plantings, which reflect the replacements needed for the native trees that are being removed, are shown along the driveway area mostly. But just to give you a sense, most of zone A is within ESHA, and the permanent impacts within zone A and B are calculated at just over an acre, 1.32 acres. And then there's partial impacts in zone C. It's calculated to be 1.12 acres. So overall, most of zone A is within ESHA, and then portions of B and C are within ESHA as well. Next slide, please. And that's it for the presentation. I know the applicant team is here, and I believe they have their own presentation as well. So we can lead into that and then open it up for questions.
Great, thank you, Adam. Yeah, if the applicant team has a presentation.
And I believe the order of presentation will begin with Richard Weintraub, followed by Chris DeLu, followed by Jake Jessen for the
That's
applicant
correct.
team.
That is correct.
Hello, is the video allowed to turn on? It says I can't start it because it's been stopped.
So our applicants, the ARB members and staff have video enabled. Our other members of the public and our applicant team members do not have video enabled.
Okay, no big deal. It just sometimes it's nice for people to see who's talking, but there you go. So I'm Richard Weintraub, and I'm the owner of the property, very long time Malibu resident. And in fact, in 1993, we lost our home in the Malibu fire, which wiped out most of this neighborhood and the neighborhood next door, Rambla Pacifica, and all the way out to Sarah Retreat, if everyone remembers, or was in Malibu in 93. But when we lived up there, this was always a dream property.
but had been owned by the same family forever. And they had no interest in selling it, and a lot of fond memories, and really excited to be able to hopefully build our home and come back towards Malibu in this direction. I'm a passionate architecture buff, currently restoring the Frank Lloyd Wright Freeman House in Hollywood, which I purchased from USC last year. I've done several projects in Malibu, the Malibu Lumberyard, the design of Nobu, and a lot of other things. What's interesting about this property to me is that, yes, it is very large for the neighborhood. It was originally intended to put about 15 homes on the property. The property has been disturbed and the roads were put in, I don't know, 60 years ago, you know, in the 1960s or something like that. And what we try to design something here is, you know, really beautiful, but, you know, prominent, giving the, you know, the size of the property, and really trying to create, again, bring back a lot of animals and a lot of native growth to the neighborhood, with the understanding that we have to be very conscientious of fire. When we lost our home in the '93 fire, the first thing that didn't have any water anymore was the water pressure when we turned on the hose. It just disappeared right away. And as part of the requirement to build this home, currently there's a 50,000 gallon tank in the neighborhood, which services the whole neighborhood for potable water and for fire suppression. And we are required to triple that amount. So to add 100,000 gallons of additional tank on the Water District 29 storage, and Water District 29, as you may or may not know, is part of Los Angeles Municipal Water District. It's not part of Las Virgenes. And, you know, triple the firefighting capacity for the neighborhood. Everyone in the neighborhood's really excited about that. I'm excited about it. And we've gone through the process to get that approved. The water district was supposed to build this over the last several decades, and they've just always put it off, and have now pretty much indefinitely put it off, and are putting the onus on that to anyone who wants to develop in the neighborhood. So here we are. I'm available for any questions. I want to turn this over to Chris DeLoe, who's going to do a presentation today. And if anyone has any questions for me, I'm here. And thank you for your volunteer work on this committee, and thank you to staff for helping me get here today. And I'll turn it over to Chris now.
Thank you, Richard. And Chris, you have about 11.5 minutes remaining.
Great, thank you. Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. It's early in the morning for a hearing. So here we have a presentation we'd like to present. Could you do next slide, please? So the project is located in eastern Malibu, in the Las Flores Mesa area. Next slide, please. And you can see from this topographic map, which is incorporating the USGS layers and GIS under the property, you can see how the property has been significantly disturbed, graded, and it's, you know, presents manufactured slopes. As Richard specified, it was done very, very long ago, before the Coastal Act and whatnot. Next slide, please. So here's a 2001 aerial photo from LA County GIS. You can see the property is disturbed and denuded. Next slide, please. And in 2006, you can see that disturbance remains. The property was continuously and historically cleared until recently. Next slide, please. So here's the 2020. You can see again that the property has, you can see that the clearance has stayed, and some of the Escha and the sage scrub is growing back on the southern portions. And it has continued to grow, and you know, to this day, which is why the project biologist Andy Ford has mapped a large part of this disturbed area again as Escha, because the Escha has returned and regrown. Next slide, please. So you've gone through the project description with with Adam, so I'll skip this part. Next slide. The only thing I will add was that reference to the Toyon and the oaks, which I'll get to in a minute. But we are proposing to remove two Toyon they're required in order to accommodate the driveway and the R&R adjacent to the driveway. This is the site plan right here, which you've already seen. The reason we're taking the access road from the far side of the property there is because most of this property is covered by a landslide, a historically active landslide, which I'll show you the limits of in a minute. And that operates as the most significant constraint to siting of development on this property. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, the discretionary requests are a variance for ESHA buffer, reduction of ESHA buffer, a variance for construction on steep slopes for a very small part of the driveway, and a site plan review for construction over 18 feet. Next slide, please. So here is the overlay of the project footprint, and the areas in yellow are non-ESHA and the areas in green are ESHA. As you can see, the siting of the residents, it takes advantage of a lot of the denuded and non-ESHA areas being in the fuel mod zone, especially B and C there in the yellow areas, where the property to be sited further to the north or the east, which can't be due to topography and other limiting factors, but were it to be located, it would be more deleterious to the Chaparral ESHA. And there's really no place to site it that would be more protective of ESHA. And that is sort of the guiding factor in the local coastal program. Next slide, please. So here is the plan showing, this is the fuel mod plan, and it's showing the purple needle grass that's being replaced. Obviously, I believe we're impacting the needle grass for the residents, and then we're relocating and replanting needle grass along the driveway as shown in the green area. The two red dots represent the Toyons that are the driveway construction is encroaching into, and those must be removed. They are going to be replaced in accordance with the native tree ordinance for the city. They're mitigated at a ratio of 10:1. However, we have, which we have done. We are recommending, or we're planting 20 replacement trees, Toyon, along the driveway. Next slide, please. So I don't know if I recall Adam may have said that we're removing an oak. I don't believe we're removing an oak, but we are planting along the driveway 40 Quercus agrifolia, 40 coastal live oaks. This design not only enhances the native habitat on site, but it also provides an excellent wind block for fire that's approaching from the north and northeast. Next slide, please. So as mentioned before, we have to comply because we're proposing development in ESHA, and that's unavoidable. We have to comply with the city's 10,000 square foot development area limitation. And the area in blue is showing all areas outside of the hammerhead turnaround of the driveway. And that is under 10,000 square feet, as is permitted pursuant to LIP 4.7. Next slide, please. And so, as you can see, again, there's overlapping fuel mod to the located to the west. We cannot push ourselves further over in that area to avail ourselves of that because of the geologic setback. But even if we did, we'd still be encroaching into additional area to the south. Next slide, please. Yes, and this is where we're talking about compliance with the 10,000 square foot development rule and the fact that there are no other feasible siting alternatives due to geological constraints. Next slide, please. And we will be mitigating for the impacts to ESHA for the roughly 2.5 acres of removal of ESHA. We'll be mitigating that either through habitat restoration, conservation, or in lieu fee, probably in lieu fee for habitat conservation. Next slide, please. So here is the variance for construction on steep slopes. There's one part of the driveway here that has to go up that existing manufactured fill slope right there. unfortunately, there's just a tiny, tiny little bit, if you can see the little pink areas and red areas in there, there's tiny little bit of steep slopes that we can't avoid because we have to bring the access road in that way due to the geologic setback. There is, this site is underlain by a large historically active landslide. You can see there's a black line going through the site, through the middle, right below the house, and right above that yellow circle. That line is the geologic setback line. This property has been studied for decades by Land Phases and Mountain Geology, by Jeff Holt, and Jeff used to sit on this body. I don't know if he still does anymore, but he was the geologist that studied this and basically had to incorporate a slight buffer. But really, I mean, the beginning of this landslide complex, which goes below Las Flores Mesa Road and down a ways, it's very large, and the average depth of that landslide is 50 feet deep, reaching 80 feet deep at some places. Next slide, please. So here's the plate, the main geologic map from the report, the Land Phases report. You can see that there's some small superficial landslides that are shown below the house, plan south, right there. We are going to be removing and recompacting those. Those are largely superficial slumps, averaging about 5 feet deep. We want to go ahead, the geologist has recommended to go ahead and remediate that with removal and recompaction, and we're doing that. Next slide, please. You can see from a cross section here going to, I believe it's pretty much directly east. That's the landslide designated as QLSR. And you can see it references Las Flores Mesa Drive there, so you can get an idea of scale and depth of the landslide. And you can see the setback, the geologic setback line provides a decent buffer right there going to the middle, roughly the middle of the pad in that particular location on the section. Next slide, please. And so LP Land Phases has reviewed all the prior reports done by Mountain Geology, which were substantial. There were 7 reports and studies done. We pin-cushioned this site pretty well. Tons and tons of geologic exploration and investigation was done, and recommendations were provided by Mountain Geology, and those recommendations were adopted by Land Phases. And ultimately, the city of Malibu reviewed all these reports and approved the project and agreed with the geologist that the setback from the landslide was appropriate. The house will have either deepened foundations or a mat slab, and you will have removal and recompaction within the footprint of the house and just outside it. Next slide, please. So here's kind of a setback of constraints and setbacks exhibit. These are the yard setbacks you see here. Everything obviously outside of it is the outside of the poly is the yards, and the house cannot be sited in those locations. Next slide, please. And there is the geologic setback line you see there, and obviously that pins us to the to that northern side of the pad. We cannot build or construct anywhere to the south of that blue line because that's going to be a restricted use area as designated by the geotechnical engineer. So all development must occur to the north of that. Next slide, please. And here you have all those constraints together, and that what is left in the middle is where we can build. So next slide, please. So the driveway location, like I said, it was there was another driveway existing located down below. We couldn't put the next slide, please. We couldn't put the driveway there. Next slide. Next slide. Now this is going to have soldier piles. This entire hillside is going to be pinned with soldier piles, probably near the top of the landslide, just to provide the stability needed to protect the pad should the historically active landslide begin to move. So we're going to be doing significant stabilization with soldier piles, and any attempt to bring the road in down below would lead to 50,000 cubic yards or more of removal and recompaction is quite less than ideal from an environmental standpoint and from a grading standpoint. Next slide. I'll skip through this. Next slide, next slide. Thank you. And Water District 29, this is probably, like Richard said, this is one of the more exciting aspects of the project. There are 3 neighborhoods in Malibu that are really bad as far as fire protection and water goes. This is one of them. Carbon Mesa and Lechuza Highlands are the others. These are in dire need of infrastructure improvements, and that's what we're going to be doing. The client's going to be spending, probably 7 figures and then some to put in a new 100,000 gallon tank and to install roughly 2,600 linear feet of water main and other infrastructure. The portion that we're doing for our project is 650 feet of linear, but the neighbors we're working towards, it's 2,500. So the entire neighborhood is going to be made a lot safer through this aspect of the project. Next slide, please.
And Chris, if you could try to wrap up, you are at time.
Yeah. And here's the plan, just so you guys can kind of get an idea of the scale and scope. It goes all the way down the water main to the bottom. Next slide, please. The project's been reviewed and approved by all agencies. Next slide. And that's the end of our presentation. We're available for any questions you might have. Thank you very much. You're muted,
Courtney, you're muted.
Oops, sorry about that, guys. All right, thank you guys so much. Thank you for all the presentations and all the information. If there is someone who would like to kick it off, I just want to remind everyone, all of our ERB members, to keep it to recommendations that are specific to this project. So if anybody wants to kick it off, please feel free. Or not. Anybody have any comments? Okay, Clark.
I was just trying to be polite because I did all the talking on the last project. It's well presented. It made it really easy to understand the constraints. My questions were going to be around that geologic setback. So I appreciate showing a section. As an architect, you don't often get that. And the projected plane, understand what's going on there. I did have one question because it is an ESHA, so technically I think some portion of the driveway, the new driveway, the proposed driveway, so that grading is the minimum required. So I'm just wondering about the relationship of the total grading to the slope. I couldn't remember, is the slope a variance as well on that driveway in that section? And if so, aren't you you're within the geologic setback. So I'm assuming that that's underpinned as well and, has piles. Just tell me a little bit about that driveway and the grading associated with it. Applicant, perhaps, or?
Yeah, does the applicant want to respond?
Yeah, maybe Richard could respond too. He knows a little bit more, but the geologist in his report specified that if feasible, which he realizes it's not entirely feasible to locate everything out of the setback area, the structure definitely, but the road portions of it will inevitably have to go through that setback area. And I'm imagining they will be pinned with piles. I don't think there's any other way to do it. And we'll be using flexible joints for the gas lines and other utilities, water, etc., and taking all precautions and incorporating the geotechnical recommendations, geologist recommendations.
Thank you.
But in answer to your question, we'll develop those plans a little more in the building and safety phase, but the geologist has provided recommendations.
Clark, does that answer your question? I just want to make sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I said thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
Jennifer,
of course.
Go ahead. I see your hand raised.
Hi, I had 2 main things that I had recommendations on. Number one was there was in the packet talk about a spring botanical survey being completed. I don't know, there was no follow-up on whether or not that was done because the survey for the monarch butterfly, which is slated to become an endangered species in 2024. There's habitat for that, and certainly when the study was done before was not the time when they would be migrating. So I would recommend that a study be done during the time of the migration to verify whether or not the monarch is going through there, if there's suitable habitat for that. And then my second recommendation is there's a lot of glass, and with the height variance, those are prime for window strikes, birds flying into the windows and dying. So any type of mitigation that could be done there to prevent the needless death of the birds that are migrating through the Western Flyway.
I have taken notes on both of those. As far as the spring botanical survey, I've made a note that for your request or recommendation to have a study be done for the monarch butterfly, but I believe that the spring botanical survey is required prior to construction. So if they don't construct this, so if they do construct this year, we would require it the spring next year. I believe it's a pre-construction requirement, just for clarification.
Oh, Courtney, if I might add one thing to that. If that's
Sure.
okay. I believe if you read the bio report, Andy did go out there during the springtime and he did not observe any monarch butterflies out there. The one thing he did say is that the eucalyptus that are on site where the habitat is, it's further to the south, away from the project site, and he didn't anticipate it having any real activity with monarchs because of the density of the trees and the vegetation. It's a high wind area, etc. But we are, of course, would be willing to do. So he didn't think it was suitable habitat or likely that they would occupy that area, but happy to do the spring survey as is typical before we start grubbing and doing construction.
I just want to say, notwithstanding any of that, and I don't know enough about this. I used to plant Buddula everywhere, and I know that's not a habitat for butterflies, but they sure like it. If there's any way to create or help to create a habitat for the monarchs, milkweed or whatever, I'm very much encouraged to be able to do that if it's positive for the butterflies. We desperately need to save them.
Thank you, Richard and Chris. I appreciate those comments. So Barbara, I'm sorry, Jennifer, not Barbara. I wrote down your comments and they've been recorded. Noah, I think we'll move on. Noah, what comments do you have?
Yes, my comment is, well, I just wanted to quickly the monarch butterfly question. So the monarch butterflies in the coastal area in Malibu, they arrive for their overwintering estivation. And so they're looking for wind protected habitat, eucalyptus, sycamore, coast live oaks, and other trees that can provide a wind buffer. So if you have a stand of eucalyptus or sycamore or full height coast live oaks around the property, that would be potentially suitable monarch overwintering habitat, and they arrive around October, and they usually stay through March. We have really low numbers along the coast in the Malibu area, so they're really hard to find the clusters, and the clusters can be pretty small, not like what you would find in other places where there's thousands. But the way to support those overwintering habitats is through the planting of winter nectar species. So things like, mule fat and baccharis and encelia, the California sunflower, and various other plants that flower in the fall and winter. Additionally, it is not recommended to plant a reproductive plant for the monarch butterflies, and will actually excite them out of their estivation and will result in a non-successful overwintering. So it's actually recommended not to plant milkweed within a mile of overwintering habitat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noah.
And just in general on the project, I just wanted to commend the effort that has gone into this project to position it as a part of the landscape and a part of the natural habitat rather than just something that's superimposed on it. And I think there's been a lot of thought and consideration for how the project can work with the landscape and with the natural habitat and minimize the impact. So I think it's a good project.
Do you have any other further recommendations while we have you? No? Okay. Okay, thank you, Noah. Noah, Jennifer, your hand is raised, but I'm assuming you're gonna put it down, Noah. So Clark, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to the owner, Richard, to take that excitement you clearly have for this project and follow through on what you were suggesting about, if there's anything I can do for the monarchs, et cetera, to continue, because we have a good sense of the mitigation relative to the oak woodland that you plan to create, which is great. And I think evidence, of wildfire protection, given that historic slope is still heavily wooded and not burned. But also and this is, we don't have access to a more detailed plan from the house out, really did look at that as an opportunity for a defensible space and wildfire compliant habitat, and just keep going with it, because the concept's established. Your landscape design concepts is established with that woodland, and I see the needle grass response, and that's great. But just right to the house, if you are interested in maximizing the habitat, that don't stop just with those things that we see on the plan. So, and
Sure.
thanks for your interest in. I'm kind of excited for you. It sounds like
Thank you. Thank
what
you.
you want.
Thank you.
Great. Clark, I did write that down, so that made it in. And then I just wanted to check in with Barbara. Do you have any recommendations?
Not really any recommendations. I think it's a nice project. I have a question. I'm just wondering, for the steepness of the driveway, how long would that be? I couldn't tell from the plans.
There's only a short run that comes down a little hill. It's a little whoop-de-doo. If you go to the PowerPoint, I can actually show you again.
Is it 20 feet? Is it
Richard, do you know the exact length? I think it's
I don't, but Jake Jessen from the office is on, and he could tell you if we went back to the thing.
it's
Are you asking the section through the steep slope?
Correct.
yeah. We want to know how long it is, right? If you go back a couple slides, you just passed it.
yeah.
So I think the driveway is about 500 feet overall, so
I can tell you.
Not that one. It showed the slope map. It's the slope
One
map.
or two before.
correct. I know, it's just at the beginning of the driveway, about a quarter of the way, or less than a quarter of the way. It's not there on that slide. It's at the beginning of the driveway.
Yeah, it's about 20 feet.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's
that-
pretty small.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
You can
And-
see it
and
right
I-
there.
And out of curiosity, do you really have to remove the two existing oaks there? They don't really seem to be bothersome with the driveway.
Oaks are not.
I think they're Toyans, not oaks.
Toyans, I'm sorry.
If we can save them, sure.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
The issue that we have is you can see the curvature, so we're working around the approach to the steep slope. We
Yeah.
can try to take the old college try and save the one to the left. The lower one, I think that one might have to be removed given the slope.
The slope, yeah.
Because
Okay, I
we
understand.
also, it's hard to, you can't see on this image, but there's a steep slope. Well, as you can see at the gate, you can't see my cursor. But right as you enter, what we've done is the road bends down and then bends up. So we're working around the grades of the property to avoid all of the slopes.
Yeah. No, it's difficult, definitely difficult. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good project. It's an unbelievably difficult site, and all the effort that's been made is appreciated. And I think the water tank is especially appreciated. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate it. The last one I wanted to just check in with is Anthony. I know you haven't raised your hand, but I just wanted to see if you have any comments on this project.
My only comment is that the 100,000 gallon water tank is a benefit for the entire community, not just this structure. And
yes.
as I recall, LA County Fire equipment left the area in '93 because the water system failed. And the water system failed because of inadequate piping and inadequate tank size. And the same thing happened to La Costa. So the water tank itself is worth the price of admission from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments from any ERB members at this time? No?
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for their time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.